Well, everyone, I'm delighted to welcome Jessica Clarke to the Storybox podcast today. Jessica is the co-owner of two businesses, one called SweatNet Nashville and SweatNet Denver. And she's also a business operator. And I believe she's studying to be a beautician, as what Australians would call it. She had a crazy name that I can't actually say. And I've forgotten already, but I remember you actually did telling me. You've also got a Bible verse on there on your Instagram page, which is I can't even say it again. First Thessalonians 5:16. I swear God's got a sense of humor. He decided to do that, which basically says, rejoice evermore. And you are dedicated to helping others. Jessica, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to the Storybox podcast today and butchering that intro.
No, it was perfect. Thank you for having me.
Like I said, it's my absolute pleasure to have you. I'm really looking forward to actually speaking to you today. I have one question that I love asking people to start things off, and that is, what does success look like to you?
I think success to me is waking up with a purpose. I feel like I've experienced different levels of success, or what people would say is successful, and you can write them down on paper, but it's the feeling of having a purpose and making an impact, even if it's a small impact. I think then you can be successful.
Where did you come up with this idea of success and relating it to your purpose? Was it more of a gradual thing over time, or was there more of a catalyst moment somewhere in your life?
I think it's been a gradual thing over time. I think I've always been competitive. I was a competitive runner in college and all through high school. And then I quit that and I went out into the world and I got a job with a high paying salary. And so I had the success of money or a promising career and the success of social media for whatever that's worth, and the success of owning a company. But all of that has always felt empty if I'm not actually impacting other people or interacting with other people on a daily basis. So I think that it was like last year, I finally got to the conclusion when on paper everything looked great. And I was like, but something's still missing. And it was that the purpose aspect of life.
Was it like a sudden moment that you realized, oh, I'm missing this in my life? Or was it more or less like you just started realizing it over the last couple of weeks and you started thinking about it over the last couple of weeks? And was it like a ton of bricks that it dropped on you?
Yes, I think that's exactly it. Is I started to I had finally gotten to exactly where I wanted to be. Everything seemed like it was on track. And um I was waking up in like these weird moods and funks and couldn't figure out why I wasn't happy or why I didn't feel satisfied. And
Mm.
it was because I was living very like selfishly, and every day was planned around my agenda. And that wasn't, it just didn't sit right. And so, yeah, it kind of hit me one day whenever I was going about doing my Jessica day. And I was like, this is so not right. And something has to change. And so, yeah, I think the ton of bricks is a perfect description of that.
So, what would you say your purpose is today compared to what it was before?
I think my purpose is to be vulnerable with others and to invite others into vulnerability.
Mm.
And that sounds very like complicated, I guess it could, but really it came about from realizing that in sharing what's really hard in my life, other people can relate to me more and realize that they're not alone. And I think that's something that is really impactful, especially right now when we can't necessarily like be around people. And so you can feel really, really lonely, and making sure that that doesn't happen.
Speaking about vulnerability for a moment, because that's a topic that not a lot of people like speaking about because it does hurt a lot of people. Like being vulnerable, we as human beings, we struggle with it because we're very much closed off. So,
Mhm.
how can someone actually be more vulnerable, and why is it important to be vulnerable?
I think um, I mean, I can only speak from personal experience, but what made me feel comfortable in being vulnerable was the very first time that I shared like the deepest, darkest secrets that I thought I had. It was with someone who said, "Oh, yeah, I've been there, or
Mm,
I've done that, or I felt something similar." And realizing that like the yuckiest parts of me are kind of a part of everyone. And so there shouldn't be shame associated with them. And the whole purpose of having like those hard pasts, I personally believe that we have those hard things so that we can make a positive impact on someone else or relate to someone else. I mean, humans are innately relational people and we need a community to thrive. And so the way that you can relate to others tends to be from being super vulnerable. I personally like people more when I realize that they aren't perfect. And so I think that I'm a recovered perfectionist. And so realizing that no one wants to
right.
be around a perfectionist
Yeah.
was really huge.
I struggle with perfection or chasing this idea of what perfection actually was. And it did
Mhm.
more harm to me and my mentality than good, because I realized that why was I chasing perfection in the first place? Was it for my own gratification, or was it for other people's gratification? Or they can see Jay, he's doing this, therefore we're going to like give him a little bit of a boost almost. And I was like boosting my ego. So I think that chasing this idea of perfection is an ego boost for many people, and that's why it's so attractive. But then it's also so deadly at the same time. And then the only way to really unhinge that is to be vulnerable and to say, I've got an actual problem with chasing perfection, which takes time once again. But why? I'm curious about why it's so harmful for, say, a person to actually. Why do they fear actually being vulnerable in the first place?
I think it all goes back to these feelings of guilt and shame that we carry with us.
Oh,
I
that's
think
my question was. I just
that,
remembered. Why do people feel so shameful in the first place? That's what.
oh,
Yeah.
that's a good question. Um, Gosh, that's a harder question.
Mm,
I think that um, we're scared, or I'll just continue to speak personally,
mm,
but I think sometimes I get scared that if I am too vulnerable, someone will call me out and that will be shameful. And that feeling of shame is like something you have to struggle with yourself. Like no one can take shame away from you.
mm.
People can like encourage you and say you're doing a great job and all of this, but if you have a feeling of shame, that's something that you have to work on, and that can be really really hard. And I think that it can also be something that like sharing with other people is scary because usually your shame is true,
Mm.
and so it's scary to know that someone could agree with you in that too, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
It makes perfect sense, especially when you said because that shame is true. And
Mhm.
I think that's what breaks us down oftentimes is realizing in the moment that, okay, this situation that we have put ourselves in, it's mostly our choice in the first place. And we've
Mhm.
accepted it to be the case. And we feel this sense of shame, but we've got to ask ourselves, why are we feeling it in the first place? And
Mhm.
how can I get over this feeling of being shameful to others or even to myself, like not being confident? And I guess my question to you is, having been someone in, I guess you could say, the spotlight in the media, it could be all these ideas can be thrown around and you can at any moment be shamed for anything. How do
Mhm.
you build this sense of resilience and this sense of confidence about yourself to just be you and not worry about what the media is saying, what other people are saying?
Well, there are two things. First of all, I definitely do worry about it sometimes.
Mm,
And it's hard to remember that the things that are being like, you can't please everyone, I guess, is the basics of it. Is I'm always, if you have a platform of any kind, whether it's a million or 100 people following you, you're not going to make everybody happy. And that might just be like your grandmother that doesn't love the photo of you that you just posted, but like you're going to have to get over it. And so as long as you're consistent and you're staying true to yourself, you can't be upset about the one person that doesn't like you. And then what kind of has helped me a lot actually is last year I was having a conversation with my roommate and we were talking about first dates. She had just gone on a first date with someone, and we were just talking about, what happens if you don't hear from the guy again? And she was like, you know what? If I don't hear from a guy after a first date, he's not rejecting me because he doesn't know me. There's something else inside of him that he is just not ready to get to know me. And that stuck with me whenever I face rejection or someone not liking me on social media or in the media, or even after meeting me in person, which I don't know, but they don't really know me. They have a perceived image of me, or they know me from the 2-second video they saw or the photo that maybe didn't sit well with them, but they don't actually know my heart. And so they're not really rejecting me. There's something else going on. So when you approach it from that perspective, it doesn't feel as like hard or as rejection filled as it is just, it's okay.
It's easy for us to make judgment calls based on what is available, the kind of information. And I always seem to say to people, look, there's always two sides to every story. You're just seeing one small part of it. You're not seeing the whole story yet. Why don't you, instead of making a perceived judgment call to start off with, why don't you go and ask them? But a lot of people are too afraid to ask a question because it means that they're kind of owning up to their fault, their mistake, and they're trying to, I think most times they don't want to believe that it's true. And if it is true, it makes it even worse for them as well. So it's always for me, I don't, it's easy to judge, and I'm always catching myself judging the exterior rather than the interior. And then I need to catch myself when I do that and apologize firstly to me and say, why am I doing that in the first place? I shouldn't be judging someone else because I'm no better than them. I like what you're saying about the followers, and it's very true because social media has this idea that the more followers you have, the more popular you are, but you don't know what's going on in that person's life. I mean, they could be miserable. They could, it's all up to them. And it's like a shallow view in a way of looking at what fame really is and what identity really is and how people can actually find who they are when they're being thrust with so much, I guess you could say heavy content and a lot of pressure from society. And yeah, it's a crazy thing, isn't it?
Oh, it's so crazy. And I think I like what you said about identity too, because when you do follow people on social media or you look at their life, it's easy to lose your identity into this spiral of comparison. And so I think that makes it really hard too, because you can compare yourself to anybody on there and wonder why they have something that you don't. And that gets super dangerous too. So the snap judgments and the not knowing what's going on in people's lives, just like you said, it happens quickly and it happens to everybody.
You become a vicious cycle, and it's very, very hard to break, but you've got to be the one to make the choice to actually break it. And sorry, my mum's making a smoothie in the background. I don't know if you can hear.
No, sounds like my life.
Yeah, but really, a lot of people that I've spoken to, a lot of young people actually, they got a lot tougher than what I had. And I'm only 23, turning 24 next month, but I didn't have a phone growing up until I was in my late teens. So I didn't have this consumption of social media. So all these young people that are getting it at the age of 5, 6, 7 years old, they're already having, their minds haven't even fully developed yet, and they're already getting a sense of what the world actually is like all this negative information that's being pumped into their brains, and they're told this is how you're meant to think, how you're meant to feel,
Mhm.
etc., etc. And then they go and later on in life, they compare themselves to other people and they don't feel their own worth. And it's so much, it's harder, and that's what leads to a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety, a lot of high stress. Um, all these disorders that come from pretty much what we take in, like, and
Yeah.
that's mostly our choice. And like I said before, we've chosen to accept it. You know,
Mhm.
it's sad in many ways.
No, it is. I mean, so I just turned 25, so we're around the same age. And I don't know about you, but when I was in like middle school and high school, no one really had anxiety or talked about it. And
No,
then I feel like in college it kind of became more of a thing, but now there's all these like elementary school students that are struggling with anxiety. And I think a lot of it does come from what you're talking about of just you're on your phones and you're looking at all these things that you're not. And
mm.
yeah, that'll make anyone anxious.
Yeah, like when I was growing up, I mean, when I turned 14, I met this girl. She exposed me to a whole new world of mental health and depression and anxiety. But that was mostly, she already had it before we met, and she was very good at masking it. Then all of a sudden, because she took notice of me and I wasn't exactly, you could say, popular in school, she took notice of me. We started talking, and then 2 weeks, 3 weeks down the line, she goes, "I'm depressed," and she starts cutting herself on Skype. And so I had to, I was exposed to all this, and I was going through puberty at the same time. So I was forming all these ideas of what the world was really like at 14, and having to be, it got to the point where I actually got depressed as well. It was an emotionally abusive situation. But there's kids, I've spoken to kids as young as 7, and they've asked me questions like, Jay, uh, why do people do this? Why do people do that? And I can't answer them. And it's so saddening to think that that's where our society is going. And I always say, if you want to change a generation, change the kids, because
Mm,
they are the next generation. And if we're not teaching them the right things, the right principles and values, and what's really right, then we'll lose all the kids. We'll lose them, and our society will be a lot worse. Mm.
yeah, spot on.
It's, how do we get onto this?
I don't know,
It's
but
so
that
good.
was
Um,
wow, what a crazy story.
I'm curious about going back to what you wanted to be when you grew up. What did
Mhm.
you actually see yourself doing?
If you asked anyone in my family when I was in all through elementary school, I wanted to be a princess mom was what I would say. And then in middle school, I think I wanted to be a teacher. In high school, I wanted to be a doctor. That's what I went to college thinking I would do. I wanted to work in the NICU in the hospital, so for like premature babies.
Mm,
And I did that. That was kind of what I was hoping for about a year and a half in college. And then decided it wasn't for me. And I switched to a communications degree with a business minor. So,
no.
summarize, I've never really known what I wanted to do when I grew up. I've never had like a dream, really.
Mm. That's fascinating, because I know for me, and once again, I know this is about you, but I, when I was 8 years old, I wanted to be a filmmaker, but my life has completely spun in directions that I never thought I'd actually go. So at one stage, I wanted to be a nurse. Then I went off to business college. I wanted to go to film school. That didn't happen. And I had all these dreams and ambitions, and yet I ended up in real estate last year. I ended up in after school care, ended up in hospitality and real estate. Yeah, I went around and did all
Wow.
these careers, and
Yeah.
then never really knew, apart from film, what I really wanted to do. So it's kind of like I was aimless a bit, but interesting
Mhm.
in the way that I ended up getting to this point, because I got a business degree as well.
Huh?
And I had one failed business, didn't work out. And then now I'm doing this. And it's almost like, well, how in the world did I get here?
I was gonna say, does this feel like it's fulfilling your filming itch or a little bit or not quite? Are you
100%.
more
Like
visual?
100%. Like it's weird because I'm talking to people that I never thought I'd ever have the opportunity to actually speak to. And
Mhm.
going from being a shy person to now talking to people like yourself, it's almost like, wow, where?
So
And
cool. It's so cool to see. I mean, if you told me that I'd be here even 2.5 years ago, I would never believe you.
so, how did you get to being here? What's the story?
Um, Honestly, a big part of it is who I'm engaged to because he went on a TV show when he was 25, and he's just the best, and every America fell in love with him, and then I got to fall in love with him, and that kind of changed my trajectory, but in like the best way possible. And a lot of it was being smart with my money when I first graduated from college because my first two jobs were in sales and I saved almost every penny that I had. And so when I realized I didn't want to be in sales anymore, I was able to quit my job and say I'm going to give myself 2 months to kind of figure it out. And in those 2 months, my friend reached out to me about SweatNet, and kind of all took off from there. And I was able to do that and work on like a social media brand in quotations for myself. And then from there, I've been able to start a whole other website where I get to speak to the vulnerability part of women and kind of do that on the side. And now I'm back in school. So I'm just all over the place, but I was able to do all those things. I guess first because I have a partner who encourages me and believes in me and encourages me to take risks, which I'm not a risk taker. And
Mhm.
then I also was, I guess, wise enough to make sure that I was okay before I stepped into all of these different opportunities.
Now we'll get to who you're engaged to later in the line, but I'm curious about, you went into sales.
Yeah.
Now, did you like sales and why did you leave sales?
I did not like sales. I
Yeah.
went into sales because it promised me the best paycheck as a communications major. And
Yes.
that was, see?
Know the feeling.
Yes. And like when you're graduating from college and you're like, oh my gosh, these are all of the bills that I have to pay in 2 months. Like, yeah, I'm going to get the highest paying job I can. And like when money's on your mind, nothing else really matters until 6 months in and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not a salesperson. Like, I can't look at you and tell you that this is better when there's something better out there, no matter what. I just can't do it. So, yeah, sales wasn't for me. And I just couldn't do it anymore. It was a life sucking career for me. Some people are amazing at it and like love it and love the feeling of making a sale, but I never got that like high after making a sale. So it was never, just wasn't a good fit.
I know the feeling. Was it commission only?
Yeah, well, it was a really, really small base salary.
Yeah.
So just enough to like pay rent and then everything else was commission.
They sort of entice you with the base salary and say, look, if you get X, Y, and Z amount of sales, then you can earn a large amount. But then they don't tell you how long you have to be there in order to actually make the amount of sales and how hard it's going to be to actually make a sale to begin with. And
Yes.
the amount of dishonesty that goes on with sales, it's not right. And like I was, my family said that I could sell a fridge to an Eskimo, and
Mhm.
I literally was like, okay, cool. How am I going to do that? First and foremost, I went and got this one sort of career. It was funny because it was commission only, and they gave you a 1 week training, and that 1 week training was learning this script. So I learned the script. I was top of the class, very good at it. And then the first day they tell me, okay, you're hired. They make it seem like if you don't learn the script, if you're not good, you're going to be fired. You're not going to make it. And I wanted the money. So I'm like, I need the money, desperation. So I'm like, I did the best I could, got there. First day, they're like, you got to go out to whoop whoop, walk the street and sell this product. And I was like, I got to spend my own money I don't have, in the hopes that I'm going to potentially sell this product, and then I'm going to get commission of what, like $100, and you guys walk away with the rest. Yeah, no,
Mhm.
walked out of the door, didn't come back.
I
um,
know. Yeah, I've been there.
it was a crazy roller coaster ride. Then I ended up in real estate. Funny thing. And I ended up making my boss a millionaire, and I walked away with no money financially, but I walked away with uh, relationships, and
Mm,
that to me was the most important thing, is relationships and the value that you bring to people's lives. It's not about money. I mean,
mhm,
money has its place in society, and I've never been the one to chase money, never had a great deal of money. I've always been wise with my money. But yeah, it's just, I got to do what I feel is right, and my integrity, what I believe in, is most important to me, not
mm,
what my boss tells me to do, which is a hard thing.
mhm.
But anyway, I'm going off a tangent again. It's very
No, I love
fascinating,
it.
very good. Um, so, for those people who don't know, who are you engaged to, and why is he, you could say, a celebrity, and how did he become a celebrity to begin with?
I'm engaged to Ben Higgins, and he was the Bachelor on the TV show on ABC, I guess 5 years ago now. So I know y'all have the Bachelor in Sydney too, or in
Yeah, we
Australia.
idolize him for some reason. I don't know why.
That's how it is in America as well. So very similar.
Why is that though? Why do we idolize people on The Bachelor? It's an interesting thing. I'm curious.
I don't know. I wasn't on the show, so I don't fully I still don't fully understand it. And Ben's explained it to me, but the idolization, I really think it's almost like escapism of it's fun to just watch someone else on TV, and it's fun to know that it's real too.
Mm,
And so you really don't know how it's going to play out, because lots of times scripted TV, I feel like you can guess what's going to happen because it had to come from someone's brain. But this is just who knows? It's two people that you can't predict, or however many people.
mm.
I don't know, but it's super entertaining.
I haven't. I have a confession. I personally don't watch The Bachelor, but I do
I
know
didn't
people that have been on it. So
yeah.
how did you actually meet Ben then? Because if he was on The Bachelor, did,
Mhm.
did he find someone on there, or no?
Yes, he did. And they were engaged, and then they ended up breaking up. And I guess actually probably 2 years ago this month, he was staying in a hotel in Nashville, and I was living here in Nashville, and I was at a hockey game. And the hockey arena here is across the street from the hotel. And he had wanted to see who was playing in the hockey game. So he searched the arena on Instagram, and I had just tagged that I was there. And so he saw my photo on Instagram. And I didn't have any
Ah.
followers or anything, but I just happened to tag my location, and he saw it.
And so he contacted you via Instagram.
Yes, he slid in the DMs.
Oh, that's great. So
Mhm.
this is a fascinating story. So what ended up happening after that? Was it like instant attraction? Did you know who he was?
So I saw that someone with a blue check mark and however many followers had messaged me, and I was like, how in the world did this person find me? And my mom has watched the show, and so she recognized him and his name, and she was like, we just got to figure out how this guy found you. And I was like, well, I'm not slick. Like, I don't know how to flirt on Instagram. So I like rounded up my whole family and I was like, okay, let's like message this guy back. So I have two brothers, and my little brother was helping me come up with the right things to say to like keep him interested. And then eventually I found out how he found my profile, and we talked on the phone like 3 days after just text messaging, and then FaceTimed, and then 2 weeks later I flew out to see him.
This is a awesome story. So what actually attracted you to him? Like what kept you engaged?
So our first conversation, where we talked on the phone, he was leaving a church service and asked me a question about generosity. And I was like, oh man, I remember it being a hard question. And if I had like typed the answer, it wouldn't have come off right. So I sent him one of those voice text messages, and then we talked on the phone. And so our first phone call already was kind of like more deep.
Mhm.
And it kind of like I felt like I could already tell the kind of guy he was. And I was 23 and he was 29 the first time he messaged me. And so I was used to like conversations with 22 or 23-year-old guys. And all of a sudden I have this wise like guy telling me about his heart, and there's an immediate attraction to that of just like, whoa, this guy's different. He's got something that like I really want to know more about. And also he's like really cute. So that helped too.
Did it scare you though to like have a guy that's older sort of be more wise and have a deeper conversation with him?
Not at all, actually. I've always been drawn to like just being around older people. And I mean, the cliche of I'm an old soul, but I genuinely am. And so I always kind of had a feeling I'd end up with someone a little bit older than me. And he's such a goofball that we're kind of like the same, anyways.
This is awesome. Because I know for me that I've always been the one person to sort of hang out with older people. And
Hmm.
if you were to know my story, it'd make a lot of sense, like why I hang out with older people. And I've always like when I speak to people that are younger than me, that are girls, they're like, Where's this coming from?" Like we're having a deep and meaningful conversation with you, Jay. I'm not good at small talk. Like
No.
I suck at it, and I got to have this deep and meaningful connection because that's where the value lies. It's like, okay, what are you really about? Let me ask you the tough questions, and then we'll see where that goes. And if you
Yeah.
can't answer the tough questions, then well, what's the point? I'm gonna help you anyway to
Yeah.
get a better understanding of it, but then there's no real connection, so to speak, on that
Mhm.
level. So I'm curious because you mentioned that he went to church. So is Ben a Christian and are you a Christian as well?
Yes, we are both Christians.
Were you brought up in a Christian household?
I was. I was brought up in a Christian household, and I went to a really, really small private Christian school, kindergarten all the way through high school. And then when I went to college, I kind of like forgot everything. And then in college is when I say I really became a Christian, because it became like I stepped away from the rules of religion, and it
Mhm.
became a relationship with someone that I believe loves me and wants the best for me. And so that's kind of when it changed for me. And Ben's story is super similar to that. So
And I'd have to relate.
I'm really,
Oh, there she is. She's back.
Mhm.
Sorry, froze there for a bit.
Oh, okay.
Um, I would
Oh,
have to
sorry.
relate. I'd have to relate to both you and Ben because I went to a small Christian school, grown up in a Christian household as well. So it's almost like you're being spoon fed everything for a long
Hmm.
period of time. And it's almost like, because I went the same road, out of church, out of relationship, the whole bit, and realized that I wasn't happy. I realized that I needed to find who God is and
Mhm.
have that relationship, make it a personal thing for me. And so I'm curious about this Bible verse. First Thessalonians 5:16. You had to pick a great verse that I can't pronounce.
Yeah.
The unfrozen.
Well, Bible verses in their profile whenever. Oop, am I back?
You're back.
Okay. Hopefully it stays like this. Yes. So I had seen like people with a lot of Bible verses in their profiles, and I was like, I guess like that's something that we do if we are Christians now. And so I just wanted one that if people went to my profile and they looked it up, they would be like, I can relate to that. And like then want to maybe relate to me. And so I put that in my profile probably like, I don't even know, 7 years ago, 6 years ago. And it's just kind of stayed because when people ask me about it, like what you're doing right now, I can be like, I mean, you can't argue with rejoice always. And if that's your first time opening the Bible and that's what you see, you're like, this isn't quite as scary as I thought it was going to be. Maybe I'll look into this thing a little bit more.
Mm.
But it also is a great reminder for me if someone says something mean about my Instagram or mean about whatever it is, it's like, well, let's just remember that we're here to rejoice and it's never as serious as you think it is.
Yeah, keep on smiling because
Mhm.
if I had a choice to frown or smile, then I'd choose to smile because it's so much better.
Less muscles too.
Oh yeah, it's always fascinated me that part of it. Like, and yet we often frown more than we do smile. It's
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever gone to the shop and just seen people like in the
Mhm.
shop and you see the countenance on their face and you see if there's any joy inside. Because
Mhm.
a joyful person will just be smiling most of the time. Like my
Yeah.
my natural countenance, when I go like that, it kind of looks very serious. But then
Mhm.
when I start smiling, it's like I'm really happy. Like I'm joyful. Don't
Mhm.
so yeah. Anyway, how has your faith played a role with everything that you do currently today?
I think that I do the parts of my life that make money, so provide me the means to live so that I can do the parts of my life that provide me with a purpose.
Mm,
And I think that that has really changed over the years where it used to be for I touched on earlier, forget the purpose and focus on just making a living and going about your day and being successful in the world's eyes. And that's really flipped for me the closer I've grown in my faith and surrounding myself with the right people and realizing that no, like this should be a means to survive, but let's remember the bigger purpose and what will people remember about me whenever I'm gone? And it's not going to be like the car or the house or the bag or whatever. It's going to be how I made them feel and the I guess just the impact I have on them. So it's changed a lot of where I'm at now, my mindset.
you jumped ahead. That was gonna be one of my last questions to you.
Oh,
Uh,
dang it.
that was my legacy question.
Oh.
You beat me to it. So you've already answered what kind of legacy you want to leave on this earth,
Mhm.
but I've got quite a few more questions for you. We've got time. Let's just say a few more questions, not quite a few. What would
Okay.
you say has been the biggest lesson that Ben has taught you in your life that you hold dear?
Um, oh gosh. He's taught me a lot about communication and not just between he and I, but the way that we communicate with other people and putting them first.
Mm,
Um, and kind of getting uncomfortable with that and making sure that everyone around you feels good before you check in on yourself. And
mm,
that can be a great thing, or it can also be a really dangerous thing. There's like two sides to it, where you neglect yourself so much that you wear yourself out. But I think that the idea of like, just I sometimes will get so in my head and I'll forget to check in on the people that matter to me. And then next thing I know, I haven't talked to someone in months and months and months. And he's really good about reminding me to check in with others, and then also to like actually speak my mind. I don't know if you're familiar with the Enneagram, but I'm a type 9, which is a peacemaker. So I tend to not want to like confront people or really say what I'm thinking. And he challenges me in that, which I appreciate.
I'm curious about that. What is that Enneagram thing?
It's like a personality test, and I think I could be wrong. I think I'm wrong that it's like religion based, but it's used really widely in churches and other places. And it's it's really an interesting test. You should take the test. I think you'd be into it.
Yeah.
But I'm a type 9. It's a scale of 1 to 9. And so I'm titled the peacemaker. So very non-confrontational, go with the flow. Um, Not great for communicating, but
And what's a one?
oh gosh, the only numbers I can tell you are a 9 and a 4, because Ben's a 4, and so we talk about it a lot. And then the 7 is the enthusiast, but I don't know what a 1 is.
Ah,
I need to do more research before I go ahead and talk about this.
a 4 is someone that is more, I guess, outspoken and thinks.
4 is individualist.
Ah,
So you, oh gosh, there's so much that goes into it. I don't want to misspeak because people are really passionate about this.
I've never heard of this before. This is great. So, where can someone find this test to do?
I've personally just Googled Enneagram test and it'll come up. And there's like different links of it. It's like any personality test where you can do like the 10-minute version or the hour-long, like really in-depth one. And I've done it a couple of times because I'm always skeptical of these, and I've always gotten a 9. So I feel very confident in it.
Yeah, I've done like personality tests before, and I'm like, this is all hocus pocus. This is not.
Yep.
This is not legit. Like, I can't possibly be this. But I'm fascinated by this. I'm going to do it later.
Do it and see if you relate to it. I'd be interested to know what you are.
I'll let you know what I am.
Okay.
And this is more fun questions. So, what's your favorite food?
Ooh, chocolate chip cookies. Warm chocolate chip cookies.
Oh, if you were over in Australia, there's a company that I'm good friends with. His name is Chris. He owns a place called Thick Cookies. I'll message you his the Instagram account. But
Yeah.
these cookies are insane. Like,
Does he ship?
I can ask.
I wonder how good a cookie would taste if it was mailed all the way from Australia.
It probably end up stale. I don't know. By the time it got there, or the customs, it might not pass customs when they see it.
They might go ahead and eat it for themselves.
Yeah, possibly. But these cookies, like, they're based on like New York style cookies, but they're big and all these flavors. I'm getting some tonight, so
That sounds amazing.
not to make you jealous at all.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Now I'm going to have to get some tonight too.
What would you say is your favorite book?
Ooh, I love this question. My favorite book is The Sun Also Rises. It's Ernest Hemingway. He's like my favorite author. I just get lost in his words. But I read all the time. I love to read all different types of books. I could have a favorite of every genre, but that's my go-to.
I've got a ever-growing collection of books in my place because I'm an avid reader as well. One of the books that I'm reading at the moment, I don't know if you know Lewis Howes.
No.
He's got the School of Greatness, and he wrote 2 New York Times best-selling books. One of them, The School of Greatness, and the second one is The Mask of Masculinity. And I'm reading that one at the moment. It is a fascinating book. So
Really?
fascinating. Oh, yes. Like,
okay, adding it to my list.
there's 9 different masks that a man will wear at any given stage of his life. And I've found myself wearing, like, I'm only up to mask, I think 6 or 7. But every other mask that I've read currently, he just breaks it down. Like, there's stoic mask, there's the aggressive mask. I'm not doing it justice, but you got to read and then get Ben to read it as well, because I think everyone needs to read it. It just makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
It's
I'm gonna
very helpful too. Now, this is one of my all-time favorite questions. It always
Okay.
stumps people. What is your favorite film, your favorite actor, and the last movie that you watched?
Okay, cool. I can tell you my favorite actor or actress is Julia Roberts or Denzel Washington.
I approve.
Those are my 2 favorites. My favorite movie, gosh, I'm not like a major movie watcher, but I always watch Pretty Woman with my mom, which is a Julia Roberts film. And whenever I was in college, I'd come home and just like get on the couch with my mom and watch it. So I have great memories associated with that movie, and I watch it every time it's on. The last movie I watched was Hamilton.
Hamilton.
Yes.
Is it on Netflix?
It's on Disney Plus. It's actually it's a play, and then they made it into a movie, and they just released it. So I
Is
watched
that
it.
with Lin-Manuel Miranda?
Yes.
I've heard a lot about this, and yet I haven't seen it.
You've got to. This is my other recommendation for you. You have to watch the movie. It's so good. I loved it.
So what's it about, just in simple terms?
It's about Alexander Hamilton, who was a political figure in the early years of US. And it talks a lot about like the founding of the United States, but it's all set to like rap and hip hop music.
Fascinating.
It's really interesting.
Now I'm curious. Okay, I've added it to my list that's ever growing.
I love it.
I love this question because I always get something new that I need to go and watch from someone. It's like I need to hurry up. But my last question for you, Jessica, is why do you think it is important for people to share their story?
It's important for people to share their story so that someone else can feel less alone.
Love that response. So good. I feel like that's a great way to sort of end our conversation. Jessica, I really, really appreciate your time today and sharing your story, even though I probably talked more than you did. Thank you so much.
It was so fun. Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Of course.